So this part of our video is about threading the machine. And I'm going to take you through little hints and ways of making it successful so you're not constantly breaking threads, and it'll make better sense to you. It looks a little intimidating because there's a lot of parts in here, but once you understand what they're doing and why they're doing it and their process, it's really not that scary. I've lined up, I don't know if you can see it or not here, but I've lined up 4 different colors of thread on my spindles. I've got mint, blue, black, and red. And I'm going to bring them through the carriers, which is up here, this carrier bar right here. And then I'm going to bring it down and I'm going to show you how to thread this part of the machine. Now I've got it kind of close so that you can get a good view of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to start with the lower looper, which is this tension right here. This one right here. That's the one we're going to thread first. We're going to go lower looper, upper looper, inside needle, outside needle. Now this process, lower looper, upper looper, inside needle, outside needle, in other words threading right to left, is the most successful way to thread your machine. Okay, so if you break a thread and you need to go back and adjust it, that's how I highly recommend you do it, from right to left. So we're going to start with the lower looper, and I'm going to pull the thread. I know you're just looking at the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and get this out of here and I'll thread it and then show you. I'm going to thread through the carrier like this. So see, I've got the thread through the carrier and I'm coming down to the top of my machine right here, and I've got a little clip. Now everyone's machine in this area is going to be different. There's a little release here. I want to make sure that my thread goes between there, and I always like to just make sure it's inside the tension, so I pull it taut to make sure it's in there. So through the carrier up here, right here, off the spool or the cone. See, the cone goes up and then back down and into the tension, this bar right here. Now, like I said, yours may be a little different, but you want to look at your manual and see where your tension is. And make sure you're in your tension. Don't just lay it in there and assume that it's tight. Then you're going to come all the way down. We're going to stay lower now, down in this area. And I'm going to show you how to thread this. So, okay, so once you're through your tension, you want to come down and you start following your guide here. See, it's 5, 6, 7 under these two. And then I'm going to go up into here, into 8. And then I have this little lever, this little white lever here. And I'm going to take my thread and I want to loop it behind this little clip. Now, this is maybe a chance for you to use your tweezers, because getting in here is a little bit hard with the end of a thick finger. And then once I have that, I'm going to push it back in, holding it taut so my thread doesn't come out, making sure it's in there. And then I'm going to find my lower looper right here. I want to get access to it, and I'm just going to simply thread through the hole of my lower looper. Now, one nice thing about the holes in these loopers, they're substantially bigger than a needle. So if you're half blind like me, it's very handy to know that. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to take my wheel and just gently roll this forward until my looper is not in front of that bar. I don't want it to be around this bar because that could break it. I want it to be inside the bar, and I'm going to take my thread, bend it and twist it, and then just thread it through this area right here, just like that. Once I get it through there, I'm going to pull it up onto the plate of my machine and get this thread out of my way so I can move on to the next one. Making sure I'm not tangled around anything, that I am definitely straight up and into there, and this is locked. So lower looper done. That's the hardest part of this whole machine right there, done. Now let's go back and let's look at the next one, the upper looper. So we're going to go back up to the thread. That's the blue thread right there. We're going to take it up through the carrier and then down through its tension. So let me do that and then I'll show you. So we're going to go up through the carrier, which is right here where my hand is. See, it's right here. And then I'm going to come down to the top of the machine and thread my tension. again, there's a clip on my machine right there to hold it in place. And then I'm going to just release this little tab so it goes in the right place. Let it go and make good and sure that it's in the tension, okay? And then we're going to come all the way down to here and start threading its section. So this one, blue to blue, green to green. So I'm going to go in the green and follow the green dot. See, I only go in this bar this time on the green one. And then I go in here, and now it's time to thread my upper looper. So I'm going to get the other one out of the way. See, there's my upper looper. I want to get it in a position where I can get to it. Lower looper's been threaded, so it's not an issue anymore. Now, if your thread gets frayed, you might need to cut it. I suggest cutting the end of your thread at an angle if it does get frayed, and that way it won't be in the way. So let me get this little thread through the looper hole. And sometimes it's nice to bend it so that it has a little bit, I bend and twist it so it has a little bit of stability. It makes it a little bit easier to thread. And there we go, threaded. Now I take this thread and I do the same thing. I want to push it back onto my plate here. I'm going to raise up my pressure foot to hold them down. See, there's my two threads right there. Now the next one is my inside needle. So we can close this up gently now, and I want to pull the wheel forward till my needles are exposed and my foot is down out of the way. So now I'm looking at my needles. So let me see here. I'm going to make sure that everyone can see this. Let me turn it just a little bit more. So right in here, let's go a little bit closer. And there we go. We're going to thread these needles right here. And I'm going to start again from the back. I'm going to take my black thread and I'm going to put it on my spindle, come through my thread carrier, and come through my tensions. Now, so let's go up here. We're going to go to the pink tension, which is right here, and we're going to go through the clip in the back, release the tab, put it in the tension, and make sure that it's in the tension. And then once we have it in the tension, we're going to come down here and we're going to go around the lower part of this. See, it's all numbered. Tells you exactly where you need to go. So I'm going to go down here, and then I'm going to come up around this arch, and then when I get back to the needle here, there's a little wire, and I'm going to make sure my thread is behind that wire. That keeps it from getting tangled. Then I want to cut my thread at a nice crisp angle so that I can get it through my needle. Now, if you have trouble seeing here, you might want to get this door out of the way, but you want to see just the needle. So you want to get everything out of the way, and then you just thread the needle front to back. And the tweezers are very helpful in doing this. If you need to use a needle threader, that's perfectly fine too. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So let's see how we do here. So our needle is threaded, and I want to make sure I keep my thread unencumbered. See, it's wrapped around the other needle, so I don't want that to happen. And I want to make sure I'm inside my bar. So all threading is good. See, now my needle is threaded properly. Now we're going to thread the outside needle, same process, up through the carrier. I won't show you since you've seen it several times now. Under the tension clip, inside the tension, and back down to the needle. So we're going to thread the outside needle, and then we'll be ready to sew. So I want to just use my tweezers. It's so much easier with your tweezers. Hold it about 3/8 inch from the end, and it'll make it so much easier to thread that needle instead of trying to use your fingers. Again, make sure all your threads are unencumbered. They're not wrapped around anything accidentally. Lift up your foot and put all your threads underneath your pressure foot out to the side. See, now all 4 of my threads are out here. Now, to make sure this is sewing, let's back up just a little bit here. I'm going to take you through this part right here. I want to just make a little chain stitch. So I'm going to chain off just to make sure nothing's breaking. Make sure your pressure foot's down, gently hold your threads, don't pull them, and just start sewing off to make sure you're getting a little chain. See, and I've got a thread here that's wrapped around something, so you want to make sure it's not catching on anything. That's why you want to do this little chain. So you just chain off. See, now I've got a chain, and everything looks like it's sewing well. Nothing broke, nothing's tied around anything. So now I'm ensured that I'm ready to start working on my tension. So let's move on to that part, and I'll show you how you adjust your tension. Okay, so now we're going to work on our tension. And what I've done for sewing purposes and to learn this, we're going to use 2 old t-shirts or 2 underwear t-shirts, whichever you prefer, to do our little assignment here, or our little project exercise, I guess you should call it. So I'm using a portion of my t-shirt, roughly about a 5 by 5 inch square here. And I want to play with my tension on a single layer of this to see if everything's in its right place. That's why we've used different color threads, so that we can see what needle or what thread is doing what job and whether it's acting out, so that we can fix that. The whole idea here is we're going to start with, let me show you this section. The tensions set at, see, let me go in a little bit so you can see. Set at the middle line, and on my machine, see the line here? It goes 3, 4, and 5, 3, 4, and 5, right there. See, the rest of my numbers don't have a line on them. That means that's the most popular area to set your tension. So I'm going to start all my tensions for this particular fabric at 4. Now, if you do this, you're going to have a lot more success figuring your tensions out, because I'd say after threading the lower looper, this is the second most frustrating part of this machine. So we have different thread colors so you can see, and we're just going to sew along this edge and see what our tension's set at. So let me go back down where you can see the lower part of the machine where we're going to actually sew. And I've got my little piece of fabric here. I'm sewing with the least stretchy part. I'll sew on this in a minute, but I'm going to start with the least stretchy. I'm going to make sure I've got my widest width and that my average stitch length at 3, and see how I do. Now, we can adjust the widths and lengths in a little bit, but let's make sure our tension's correct first. So I'm just sewing right here along this edge. Chain out a little bit past the end. It's not like a sewing machine that just does the single needle. You can pull out through here, and you can even cut with your blade in here. So watch what I do. I'm going to make a chain, and then I'm going to bring it over here and cut it off. See? And now I still have my chain back here, and I've cut my thread off. Now we're going to look at our tensions and see what's going on and see what's right. So now you can see the stitches. And what I've done, I've taken it one step further, and I've made the top stitch here, and this is the underside. So on the top stitch, the blue is the upper looper. The black stitch that's just inside is an inside needle. And then the red stitch is out here on the outside. Now if we look at the underside, we see the red stitch, and then the black stitch would be on top, and it connects to the red stitch right here. It's like a little dash. So the black stitch is actually on top. You can't see it on this side because the red stitch works, quote unquote, kind of like a bobbin on the underside. Then the under looper is the mint green over here. Now what we're looking for is, we want a nice snug stitch, but not puckered. So the fabric's laying pretty flat, and the upper looper looks pretty clean. The underside looks also very clean. The two things I'm noticing though in this stitch, it looks like the outside needle might be slightly loose. So if I were to turn this just a little bit tighter, the tension, and the upper and lower looper both look like they might be a tiny bit loose as well. So I'm going to just increase them a little bit like that, and then I'm going to run another stitch to see what happens. So we're just going to run one more after we made these slight adjustments. Very subtle. Normally, you just do one at a time, but since the needle was off just a slight bit, we went ahead and did all three. Now, this is a good comparison here. So this one looks a little snugger. If you notice, the looping isn't quite as wide on the outside, and the underside looks pretty clean too. I'm going to say that's probably a very good stitch there. Now you want to check, make sure when you stretch it or pull on it, it doesn't pop stitches. It's not so tight it pops, and it's not rippling or very loose. Now the last test I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this. So I do the singles, and then I'm going to fold it. And I'm going to sew it, folded, to see how the integrity of the stitch. And I'm going to open my stitch length up to 7, make sure it's on 7. Now this really gives me a good idea of what my stitch looks like. And from the outside, the top looks really good. Everything seems to be in place. The bottom side, again, looks very good. Everything seems to be in place. I actually like it better because I'm seeing a little bit of the black through there, and that means I'm getting a better bite on that safety stitch. The last thing I'm going to test, because this is folded, I'm going to open it up and see what kind of seam it makes. So it looks like a pretty good seam too. It's nice and snug. I'm not pulling it so that I can see big lines through there. Looks like it would hold a stitch. So I'm going to say that's a go. So basically my setting for this is the needles are 4 and 4, and my upper and lower looper are 5 and 5. And that seems to make the perfect stitch for my machine based on this jersey. So stay tuned. The next video is coming, and we'll continue our study of the serger machine.